Good evening and welcome to Mello TV. I'm your host, Nicole Hales. Coming up in tonight's Mello TV Bill Johnson poll, we will be looking at whether or not Jamaican voters are suffering from buyer's remorse having elected Andrew Holness Prime Minister instead of Dr. Peter Phillips. Also coming up tonight, Bill will break down the numbers for the opposition leader and People's National Party President Mark Golding's favorability ratings and see whether or not he has a long and difficult hill to climb before he becomes viable figure in Jamaican politics. We are joined tonight by Pollster Bill Johnson and political analyst Paul Bourne to break down the findings and analyze the data of the poll. Good evening, gentlemen, and thanks for joining us.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Bill, the people were asked, would Dr. Peter Phillips have done a better or worse job of governing Jamaica than Andrew Holness? What are those numbers showing? And based on the findings, have the people suffered from buyer's remorse having elected Andrew Holness as Prime Minister?
Okay, well, as you mentioned, Nicole, given the fact that only 16% of the country feels the country's going in the right direction, we decided to ask people if they were suffering from buyer's remorse and if they thought that the country would be running better if Peter Phillips had been elected Prime Minister instead of Andrew Holness. And by a resounding number, the people do not believe they're suffering from buyer's remorse. Only 10% believe that things would have been better if Peter Phillips had been elected Prime Minister. 21% say it would be about the same. 35% say it'd be worse, and 34% don't know. Now, if you break this down by party, only 3% of the JLP voters believe that things would be better if Peter Phillips had been elected. 60% believe they'd be worse. With the PNP, mind you, these are people who voted for the PNP in the last election. Only 27% of their voters believe that things would be better off today in Jamaica if their candidate, Peter Phillips, had been elected. 29% said it'd be about the same, 18% said it'd be worse, and 26% don't know. So only about a quarter of the PNP's own voters believe that things would be better. And it appears that the PNP circular firing squad is continuing to be in operation here. Among those who didn't vote, 8% said things would be better off. 32% said that things would be worse off. So the answer is no, the people do not believe, or the people are not suffering from buyer's remorse for the fact that they elected Andrew Holness Prime Minister.
Paul, as you just heard, the people have spoken. Interestingly, only 27% of PNP voters think that Dr. Phillips would have done a better job than Mr. Holness. What do you make of this? Even though the Andrew Holness-led government received a 43% passing grade from the people, an average of 30% less than that of 2020, only 10% of the population think Dr. Phillips would have done a better job. Your thoughts?
Well, if you were to look at the figures for yesterday in terms of the favorability ratings of Mr. Holness when he came in, and no, you're talking about almost half of Jamaicans still believe that Mr. Holness is actually doing a pretty good job. And if 1 in every 2 Jamaicans actually have that sort of sentiment, then you can easily appreciate why it is that Mr. Phillips, if Mr. Phillips were to have been the Prime Minister, it wouldn't have actually made a difference. Because technically, half of the persons in Jamaica still believe that Mr. Holness, despite all the challenges, is doing a very good job. But these figures really mean something, because if it means that your base is saying that only 27% of your base is saying that you would have done a better job, that is a clear indication that people did not really want Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, in the first place.
Paul, looking back on the work of Dr. Phillips in the party and the country, The people of Jamaica have not changed their minds about his leadership, even as the country faces a crisis of crime and the COVID-19 pandemic. Persons have shared mixed feelings about the handling of the government. Did Dr. Phillips make the right choice to exit representational politics at the time he did?
Did Dr. Phillips make a right choice? Every choice is a choice. Is it a right choice? I'm not sure. But when you look at the favorability ratings for Mr. Holness and what persons are saying, if Dr. Phillips would have been in power, that's a clear indication that Dr. Phillips would have actually made the right choice, given our current figures.
Okay, with a 27% confidence rating by PNP voters for Dr. Phillips, that he would do a better job at governance, while 60% of JLP voters say Andrew Holness would. Let's speak hypothetically now. What do you think the opposition and PNP would look like under Dr. Peter Phillips' leadership in 2022? Would it be a great divide?
That is a $1 trillion question. I'm not sure to take that one on, but let us actually look at a superimposition as to what this would actually be. It is clear to me, based on the team that is actually there in the People's National Party, that they have an excellent team in terms of on paper. Would they have done a better job? I'm not sure, because, of course, we're sort of speaking hypothetically. And we can see when Dr. Fenton Ferguson was in it, we had a problem relating to babies, etc., and what happened there. So it is difficult to say it would have been a better administration or a worse administration. But what we do know on paper, they have an excellent team on paper.
All right, hoping this is another $1 trillion question, Paul. We can't ignore the percentage of persons that did not vote in the 2020 general election that are still unsure of either of these men. 40% say they don't know, even though Dr. Phillips is out of running and Mr. Holness has the reign. This is a percentage that can impact the next general election. What would be Mr. Holness's takeaway from these numbers?
Well, there are two things in terms of what Mr. Holness should take away from it. One, he's doing a moderately good job, that's one. And two, he has much work to be done. Now, we are in almost the second year of his term, all right? And if his favorability rating is as is, and we are all aware in terms of looking at politics towards the end of the term of presidents, end of the term of prime ministers, internationally, what normally happens, the favorability rate will normally cut down to about half that they had before. So if we continue in this current trajectory, I should say, then what is going to happen to Mr. Holness is that it's highly likely that these favorability ratings are going to be mattering anymore. Because with every year, if we are unable to solve crime, unable to solve the inequalities in Jamaica, unable to solve the social injustices, unable to solve all the things that are going on inside the society, what is going to happen is going to be worse for Mr. Holness and by extension his party. So what he should take out of this is there's work to be done, and the work that has to be done is going to take a whole lot of his administration. And what he should actually do is to put in place measures to ensure that some of those things are actually brought to books, impacted on people's life, that his favorability rating can actually continue to improve, or at least remain to be a viable alternative, or not really alternative, to remain in power. Because if he does not do that, there's going to be clearly a case where people actually going to switch to another party.
Bill, let's look at the favorability ratings of current opposition leader and PNP President Mark Golding. How did he poll?
Okay, well, he has a long and difficult hill to climb before he becomes a viable political figure in Jamaica. In our survey 18 months ago, 32% approved of the job he was doing as Shadow Minister of Finance, 17% disapproved, and 51% weren't sure. Well, this time we asked a different question. Do you have a favorable or an unfavorable opinion of him? And as you can see, only 17%, or 1 in 6 Jamaicans, have a favorable opinion of him. 33% have an unfavorable opinion. That's 1 out of every 3, of course. and 50% don't know enough about him to have an opinion. Now, he's underwater in every demographic and political group except the PNP. But even within the PNP, only 40% of the people have a favorable opinion of him. The 19% have an unfavorable opinion of him, and 41% don't know. With the JLP, 10% have a favorable opinion of him, 50% an unfavorable opinion. And of those who didn't vote, 14% had an unfavorable opinion, a favorable opinion, 31% an unfavorable opinion. Now, his numbers are actually much worse than Peter Phillips's numbers were 18 months ago. At that time, 34% had a favorable opinion of Peter Phillips, 40% an unfavorable opinion, and 26% weren't sure. So Mark Golding really has an awful lot of work to do if he's going to be a viable candidate in the next general election.
Paul, you just heard the numbers for Mark Golding. Your thoughts?
When you look at the numbers in terms of Mr. Golding's, currently is at an handicapped position, currently. But we need to understand clearly the machinery of the People's National Party. And this happened in many elections that they seem to be actually out of the race, and they have actually put in place mechanisms. Because what we need to understand is that the canvassing machine of the People's National Party is a well-oiled machine. And currently, even though the figures seems daunting at the moment for Mr. Golding, the People's National Party, when put in place in terms of an election mode, it becomes a totally different organization. So this could actually easily move from a 40% to a 50%. But what exactly is the thing here, which is a good thing for Mr. Holness, is that substantial looking at the voters for Jamaica, substantial voters for Jamaica have been sort of a People's National Party orientation or a People's National Party sort of bias because of Michael Manley. So that is an handicap for Mr. Holness, and all the People's National Party need to do is to ramp up their machinery and get back the persons on their side. So for Mr. Golding, I would not actually pay this much mind, but what it should mean for him, that work needs to be done. Now, when the election machinery kicks in, then what Bill should actually do is do another research on the same matter and see what his figures are going to look like.
Paul, even in the continuous advocacy for the right leadership of the country, especially during this time of the pandemic, Mark Golding has spoken out about the handling of the pandemic, crime, and the economy, issues that presumably should resonate with the Jamaican people. But what is the opposition leader not getting right?
There are many things that he's not actually doing, because what you need to understand clearly, the government of a country is what is actually running it and not the opposition. So Mark Golding has nothing to lose by actually putting forward his thoughts. It is Mr. Holness and by extension the JLP that has much to lose. So all Mark Golding is doing at the moment is actually opposing and putting forward possibly some form of idea or inclination towards an idea. So they have not put in place, they have not given us their policies as yet. Nothing has been done in terms of that party. And therefore, all they are doing at the moment is just opposing, and everything is for Mr. Holness to lose.
Our team visited the streets today to get the views of the public. Here's what they had to say.
If Mr. Mark Golding wins tomorrow morning, he don't have anything to bring to the table. There are therefore exactly about 18 and a half executive years, and they did not see what is in the darkness. Mr. Andrew Holness opened the eyes, so they wanted to shift, and I think that Mr. Mark Golding will not do a good job.
Well, I would say maybe he may have something, but I don't know if it will work. You understand? You know, because every one of them come and say they have something to do, and when election, even by the election has finished, nothing has been done. So I don't know if it would make a difference.
I think he managed it well. He's already the opposition. He's already the opposition leader. So I think he will do a good job. You can tell him talk. He's straightforward, like a straightforward person. I think he would do a good job.
For me, if he becomes the prime minister, I think he will do a good job. Based on some comments that he make and some of the speech, most of the time still there is things, but not fulfill it. So I hope if he becomes the prime minister, he fulfill his job.
If Mark Golding should win, then honestly, on my part, it would be good at first because they always do it good in the beginning. I don't know what will happen next, so that's my views on it.
I think Mike Golding should have done a better job. Golding, he look after, he think about the poor people more. The poorest of the people, he always think about them.
Well, as you asked about Mark Golding, to me, I don't think Mark Golding go come in and do more than what Andrew Wallace do. Because to me, Andrew Wallace do the right thing for the country. The country have too much politics now. I think we're supposed to just be a human being and just deal with the thing like how it deal with it. You understand what I say? Me might be a Labour, you might be a PMP, but another Jamaica, and it is our Jamaica, you see me?
My view, you see, the opposition and the Prime Minister, it don't make a difference because it was the same thing.
Paul, based on the numbers and all what the people are saying, did the people of Jamaica make the right choice in the 2020 general election? And how can Andrew Holness and his administration assure the people he should continue to be the man for the job to lead this country?
The figures speak volume, but when I listen to the persons on the road, what emanate from what they're actually saying there is two things. There's political apathy in Jamaica, and people still believe that Mr. Holness was the best choice for the job. So, but what has actually destroyed the People's National Party is those too long a term inside the party, without galvanizing the Jamaicans, without empowering the Jamaicans, without letting persons actually become sympathetic towards the party. All of that has destroyed the PNP and continue to destroy the People's National Party. So instead of building on the legacy of the 18 years or the 20 years or the 19 years or the so long a period that they were in, what they did not concentrate on the people, and by extension, they have increased the current findings that are happening here. Now, Mr. Golding, if I were to be your advisor, I will actually say something to you. And what I'll actually say something to you is change your face and change your rhetoric. When I say change your face, change the approach that you're actually taking to Jamaicans. Let Jamaicans understand that you are in their corner and really want to make a better place for Jamaica. That is the only situation that will let Jamaicans see you as a viable alternative. Because if it is that they see Mr. Holness within that larger margin, merely opposing is not going to work for you, Mr. Golding.
With such a large margin as you speak of, Paul, did the delegates who select the PNP party president get it wrong when they selected Mark Golding?
Well, that's an hypothetical situation, and as a scientist, it's difficult to actually say if we did not actually measure other individuals, because what is certain inside the party at the moment is that a number of persons were vying for the position, a number of persons want that position, but would they have made a better choice compared to Mr. Holness? What Mr. Holness has is relating to youth and a persona that many persons are accepting, but not only accepting, they are saying based on the numbers that they approve of what he's doing. Now, the People's National Party and all parties, most parties in the world, normally have a situation where persons wait their turn before they become a leader. Now, with that said, it means that a number of the young persons that are in the party, say for example like a Damian Crawford and other individuals who are young, technically have not paid their dues. So can they step up to the plate of actually rivaling Mr. Golding and being the leader? The answer is no. So what you have apples and oranges in terms of the two parties. Apple being Mr. Golding, youth and all of that, And on the other side is Mr. Golding. All right? So it's apples and oranges. Now, if it is that you had two young persons vying for a position, it will be a different matter. And that's exactly what that is actually caused the problem for the People's National Party. The wide gap in terms of age and the wide gap in terms of personality. Even some of the very things that Mr. Holness does resonate with young persons. Mr. Holness will actually go and run some of the marathons. He will go and actually do this. He'll participate in some things. It's not that Mr. Golding can't do them, but Mr. Golding is not doing them. And as a result, what people are looking at is that this is a young guy like myself. And as I said before, the large time that the People's National Party spend in power without putting in place measures to ensure that they not only will continue, but they will be seen as favorable after they have actually come out, is currently playing on them and destroying them.
All right, Paul, still with you. We're going to look at the voters who are still on the fence, undecided. All right, let me look at the statistics. 40% of JLP voters are on the fence about Mr. Golding, 41% of the PNP as well. And let's not ignore the 55% who did not vote or they're unsure. Tell me, what does Mr. Golding need to do to convince these people who are undecided and don't know where to turn?
When you look at that 55%, in excess of 50%, and the numbers, what we need to understand clearly is a substantial part of that 50% are PNP sympathizers, all right? Because substantial Jamaica has a PNP synthesized in place as a result of Michael Manley, not anybody after. So Michael Manley has created a sentiment inside the Jamaican people that inside that 55% are a number of PNP voters. So it is a simple thing for Mark Golding to do by, as I said, change the approach that he's actually taking. Show his people where he wants to go. Let his people understand the vision that he has. Mend all those little intricacies that are happening inside the party. The divisions between so and so and so. We don't want to call any names on air. But there's a division inside the party, and all that division is eroding Mark Golding's base every day. But what they do not seem to understand, not is it only eroding his base, it's eroding the party's favorability. So if the party really understand that division is actually crippling them and causing them more problem, then they're in a sad position.
We've had a thought-provoking discussion this evening, as well as million-dollar, or was it trillion-dollar questions. Bill, what can we expect come tomorrow?
Okay, tomorrow night we're going to look at the Prime Minister's team, which cabinet members people think are doing the best job and which they think are doing the worst job. And I think people will find it very interesting.
There you have it. Join us tomorrow and every weekday until February 25 to get the answers to many more important questions during the Mello TV Bill Johnson poll, and listen to the Mello FM and Rhythm FM newscasts for the recap. I want to thank this evening's guests, Pollster Bill Johnson and political analyst Paul Bourne. I'm Nicole Hales on behalf of the entire production team. Thanks for watching.